It's Saturday, and last night I watched the TMZ documentary on Fox. It's rare that I watch TV these days. I spend a lot more time on YouTube, obviously making YouTube videos. If I'm going to watch anything, it's the majority of the time it's YouTube. I don't go to TikTok, Instagram, or any of those other platforms because there's enough going on inside the world of YouTube to keep me busy. But last night I decided to watch the TMZ documentary in its entirety, and I learned a few things. And as predicted, the documentary went exactly as I told you it would on Thursday. So if you missed that episode, go back, watch that episode. It's not very long. I just share my thoughts on how they're going to make this documentary because it was a little bit shocking to me as to how they were able to make this documentary so fast. I was actually shocked. Like the murder just happened uh, a few weeks ago, almost a month ago, and you guys already have a documentary on how you believe it all happened. So I shared my thoughts on that, and I feel quite confident after watching the documentary that Nick Reiner is more innocent than before. I was a little bit nervous when I first sat down to watch it because I'm like, what if they pull a rabbit out of the hat, almost like a smoking gun? And what if they have something that I didn't see? So again, I did learn a couple of things, but I think it actually helps the defense more than a prosecution. So welcome to Black Swan Diaries. So there's a saying that we have around this channel, and I think I got the idea, the concept anyway, from Candace Owens. And that is, it is way more easier to tell the truth than to try and remember all the lies. It's just easier. So during this investigation process of trying to overturn every stone, trying to figure out this, like who murdered Rob and Michele Reiner, and why I still believe to this day that Nick Reiner is innocent, you uncover timelines. And I've been sharing timelines over the past 3 weeks. I've been sharing them. And again, I started the whole thing a little bit different than most of you. I started this whole process on what if Nick Reiner is presumed innocent until proven guilty? What if? What if I went off of that first instead of he's guilty, throw away the key, get him ready for the death penalty, and then move on to the next thing? Go back to friends or whatever. So I approached it a little bit differently than 99% of the media. I approached it a little bit more, perhaps from the perspective of the jury. I'm just saying, okay, let's just look at the timeline. Let's just look at what's going on. Let's look at some patterns, perhaps. Let's look at Nick Reiner and let's see if there's anything that perhaps could lead to him murdering his parents. Because that's what all the media is saying, that this is a fact. Nobody's disputing this. And I'm the only channel that disputed it on day one. Why? because of TMZ. They're the ones that got me down this rabbit trail because I was like, rabbit hole, because I was thinking, why is it that one person says something and then all the other media outlets say the same script? Like, what's going on here? And it was like 100% of the media, CNN, Fox, news outlets overseas, were all saying Nick was guilty 100%. But I approached it differently. And I wanted to look at the timelines. And when I was watching this documentary, I predicted that they weren't going to use any celebrities at the Christmas party. And I think it makes sense why TMZ couldn't do that. Not wouldn't, couldn't do that. And there's a reason for that. There's actually two reasons for that. The number one tippity top reason is there are already at least 10 people being subpoenaed for the defense. And it's sealed right now before the courts. It's sealed, meaning the prosecution can't access those subpoenas. They can't open up the file and look at it, because then what they could do is they could warn the people being subpoenaed, saying plead the fifth, or say you weren't there, or you're busy, or we'll give you counsel as to how to respond to the subpoena. And you don't want that. What you want is you want the people that are being subpoenaed to respond to it, whether it means sending their lawyer to the courthouse, whether it means responding by email, or whether it means responding by phone call. You want them to respond, because if they don't, it's actually bordering on criminal. So subpoenas are a big deal. And there are a lot of times where people get subpoenaed for mainly three reasons. The first reason people get subpoenaed is maybe they're going to be a part of a grand jury where they have no choice but to show up. They drop everything, they have to show up. If they don't answer that one, they could be liable for a fine or whatever it is, jail time, who knows. And then another reason why that you want to answer a subpoena is perhaps a lawyer, an investigative team is needing you to be a witness. It doesn't mean you needed to see the crime, as in you need to have people. Let's just use the example of Robin Michele Reiner's residence. You don't need to subpoena only those people that were around that area. You can subpoena people at the Christmas party, especially if names are being tossed around like Conan O'Brien, Bill Hader, Jane Fonda, perhaps Billy Crystal, and others. The defense has the right to subpoena them because that's all that people are saying about Nick. This is the reason why he murdered his parents, was because of this Christmas party. And every news media outlet was saying it. It's because he went crazy at the Christmas party that Conan O'Brien hosted. And if you don't have the weapon, which they don't have a knife, they don't have a sharp stabbing instrument. So the next best thing that they have is testimonies. And I think this is common sense for us. I think this is common sense to have people that if you've seen or heard something about someone, that the defense team has the right to subpoena those people. Just to say, hey, we heard that you were at the Christmas party. We heard that you had an argument. We just want to ask you a few questions. You may not even have to stand trial. but we need to ask you the questions, and a subpoena allows that to happen. And if you don't respond, you could actually get into more trouble than if you had just simply reached out. So we learned last week, just before Alan Jackson stepped down, that there were 10 subpoenas, 10 of them. 10 subpoenas. 2 of them had lawyers present, meaning they didn't show up. They had their representation for them to say, here's the reasons why we don't want to be subpoenaed or can't be subpoenaed or whatever. And I think it's because they were most likely working on a project. That's me stretching. That's me guessing. But if you're at the tippity top of Hollywood, you're working. You're not looking for work. You're actually working. And you might have decided to take a little bit of a Christmas break to go to Conan O'Brien's party. And a lot of celebrities would do this. They would go to Adam Sandler's party. They would go to other celebrities' parties. Sometimes they would bounce from one party to the next. And this has been on record. As in, sources from the media, including Conan O'Brien's own podcast, Conan O'Brien would have people on also on his, not only in his podcast, but also on his late night show. And he would have people talk about his Christmas parties and how amazing they are, how much food there is, and how crazy things get. Orgies, people get high, people get drunk, all kinds of stuff there. That's on record. So if you're the defense, you're going to want to ask those hard questions. Who witnessed Nick getting an argument with his father? His father's no longer with us. So we gotta ask the questions. Who did Nick talk to? And then you're probably going to be asking Nick as well, who did you talk to at the Christmas party? Who did you talk to? So this is a difficult position for the celebrities because they're being subpoenaed, and there's 10 of them. We don't know who they are. I gave you my little magical list of who I think they are, and I think some of them include the hotel staff. I think some of them perhaps will be the four-line security company because they're the ones that are responsible for excuse me. They're the ones that are responsible for turning alarms on and off. And they're also the ones that are responsible for getting celebrities in and out of hotels without being seen. And we know that Nick Reiner checked into a hotel at Pierside Hotel, just off of Santa Monica, which I was there. I was close to that area this past summer last summer in August. I was there. I went to Hollywood, had the tour, all kinds of stuff. I was probably about 15 minutes away from Rob and Michele Reiner's home. Right. So what did I learn? One of the things that I think about when I'm watching all the interviews, and really these interviews started coming out after December 14th, arguably December 15th, 16th, 17th, and they all said the same thing. Nick Reiner has been in and out of rehab 17 or 18 times. I've heard that so many times. It's ridiculous. And they'll say things like, Shane, did you know that at one time, Nick, they don't say my name personally, but they'll say this to the interviewer. Did you know that Rick was in and out of rehab 17, 18 times? Did you know that he was on meth? Did you know that he did coke? Did you know he did this? Did you know he did that? Did you know he couldn't sit still? Because a yoga instructor would come over to the residence and teach Michele and Rob yoga, and Nick would interrupt them. And this was horrible. He would interrupt them every day. And then if you ask the question, how old is Nick? They would say, oh, he's about 7. Okay, so you're holding on to this now. Up until now, you're bringing the Nick's 32 years old, and you're talking about him when he was 7, as though it just happened. Go away. And then you have other people to this day. I've heard Harvey Levine say Nick was in a dangerous place because he was in rehab 17 or 18 times. And they never say 20. They never say dozens. They say 17 or 18. And then you look back in the interviews that Nick conducted, and they asked him, how many times were you in and out of rehab before you started working on this movie, Leaving Charlie? And he would say it was about 17 or 18 times. Remember, when Nick said this, he was 22. And it was a press conference to talk about the movie that he co-wrote with a friend named Matt. They were both in and out of rehab together, and they saw other kids their age struggling with their parents, struggling with their addictions, and they wrote about it because Rob asked them to put a little bit more emotion into their script that Nick was working on since he was 18 years old. And this is what they don't tell you. So you got to put yourself in that frame, because they're all over Nick saying he wasn't very good at presenting himself in front of thousands, if not millions of people online with his dad, Rob Reiner, who's famous. Remember, Nick wasn't an actor, wasn't part of that circle, but he wanted to be a writer because he enjoyed working with his dad. And this had all happened by the time he was 22, and now he's starting to speak at press conferences, and people are like, he's not like this, he's not quick, he's distracted by all the cameras. Wouldn't you? I struggled with this channel when I first started doing my shows. I was tongue-tied. I was like, oh man, I don't even know if I could talk for a minute. I would hit record, re-record, and I keep redoing it. I'm like, man, this is hard. And then I tried going live, which I love live now, by the way. I absolutely love live. And if you love live, you should join me tomorrow, because tomorrow I'm going to have a live panel, and we're going to be talking about the rapture, because many Christians believe about the rapture, that one day the Lord is coming back to take his church away. And then Jacob's tribulation is going to be coming in for 7 years. That's what a lot of Christians, including myself, believe. But tomorrow we're going to be talking about, where did you first hear about this idea? And where is it actually found in the Bible? And why do we believe that this can happen at any day? So if you like live shows with a panel, join me tomorrow. It's at 3:30 Mountain Standard Time, 5:30 Eastern. You don't want to miss that. We go long. We go about 2 hours, maybe longer. So if you like that kind of thing, join us live. These shows are designed to be a little bit more on the detective side of things, as you know. Been spending a lot of time on that. But I like this format because I can bring things down and be concise and spend like 30 minutes to an hour with you, and then you can continue on with your day. You can go do your due diligence, your own research. And I kind of like this format. I hope you guys do too. A little bit more insightful, a little bit more thought-provoking, and this is how I am during the day as well. While I'm sending emails out to people, calling people, I've probably called you. My camera went a little bit blurry. You've probably heard me call you once or twice. You've probably had me send an email to you once or twice. So what are the things that I learned? Well, I learned that there's nothing new that Nick has done since he was about 18, 19, 20, arguably up to 22. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Let's even stretch it out. Let's say 23, 24 years old. But there's no crime. He was never arrested. And in fact, according to sources inside TMZ, they've been on record to say that actually in the last 5 or 6 years, Nick has not touched any illegal drugs. This is TMZ saying this. This is one of the things I learned. I'm like, what? You're telling me that everyone else has been saying, including yourself at the very beginning, that it's probably because he was on meth and then he went to the Christmas party and he was all aggressive. And then people are like, well, there was actually no argument at the party. Sources close to the family said that there was no argument. And it's only the media that's hyping this up. So then you get people flipping their story. This is why I say it's easier to tell the truth right out of the gate. You get people flipping the story will say something like, well, it's because he's been off of his meth. That's why he went crazy. It's like, okay, but at the hotel when he checked in, he looked normal. Well, that's because he's off the meth, Shane. Yeah, but you said when he's off the meth, he gets crazy. I know, but I'm changing the narrative to suit my needs, Shane. You're not clocking with me. Like, you're just making this stuff up as you go along. Because you can't have both. And why is this camera? Come on, camera, focus. Is that better? A little bit better. I think it's because of my books in the background that is trying to figure out, should I focus on the Black Swan or should I focus on the books that you have behind you? I might have to tweak that a little bit. My camera's it's got OCD, or it's got HDAD or something like that. It's not sure who to focus on. So I learned that Nick has been clean for the last at least 6.5 years. As in, not saying he doesn't drink, not saying he doesn't smoke weed, but from the perspective of using illegal drugs like meth, like coke, like heroin, none. And this again is according to TMZ, which you guys all love. So we're either going to use them as a resource or we're not going to use them as a resource. Right? You can't just flip back and forth. So now they're saying that according to their sources, Nick has not been involved in any illegal drugs. So the reason why they're saying that is they're trying to position this whole thing around the idea that it's the medical industry's fault. And Nick Reiner is going to be not guilty by reason of insanity. That's what they've been going off of day one. And I'm telling you, Nick Reiner is just not guilty. As in, I believe, this is my gut, that he wasn't even there at the crime scene at all. That he wasn't there. He never murdered his parents. And until you prove otherwise, until you present a knife and have his DNA on it, and even then, you can put people's DNA on a weapon. But it would be I don't need to see the footage, but as long as the footage is out there that says that, "Hey, we actually see Nick Reiner walk into his parents' bedroom," and that's all I would need to see, and then I would need to see Nick leaving the residence. That's it. I wouldn't mind seeing him checking into the hotel, and I wouldn't mind seeing footage of him leaving, because here's the things that I've learned. Again, I know I'm taking my time on this because, I'm gonna spend a little bit more time using clips from this documentary because, again, I think it helps the defense, and I'm trusting my memory right now because I watched it last night and I don't have the footage available for me. So, that's one thing that I learned. Another thing that I learned is that Nick ordered from the hotel for beer, and that may not be strange to you, but it was strange to me that he ordered non-alcoholic beer. Non-alcoholic? Sounds weird saying that. It's got no alcohol in it. You can tell how much I drink. So there's non-alcohol. Is it alcoholic? That sounds weird. Non-alcoholic beer, and there's beer with alcohol in it. He ordered the beer without the alcohol. Sorry, my brain's a little fuzzy this morning. Um, but yeah, I found out that to be strange because if you're a guy that's addicted to meth, crack, cocaine, weed, all kinds of stuff, amphetamines, whatever, Adderall, all this stuff, and you like to drink, why would you get non-alcohol alcoholic beer? I know I'm messing this up. Non-alcoholic. That's weird. It sounds like, let me just look this up again. I know I'm having a brain freeze. Alcohol. All called. Let's see. Non-alcoholic. I can't even read this morning. Okay. Not, yeah, alcoholic. Okay, it is. Non-alcoholic. It just sounded weird. Sounded because I've heard of people called um alcoholics. Alcoholics. Those are people that can't stop drinking all this kind of stuff. Anyways, I digress. He ordered non-alcoholic beer. Sounds weird to say it, but that's what he did. This is according to TMZ. This is in the documentary. He's been clean for 6 years, as in no illegal meds. Apparently, he doesn't drink. Apparently, he was calm when he got into the hotel. He didn't have any blood on him. So when did he bring the blood? And here's another thing that I learned. That the maids, when they found the room, they came in to clean the room, they found a little bit of blood in the sink and a little bit of blood on the bed sheet. That's it. There was no mention of blinds over the wall, over the curtains. There was no mention in the documentary that I watched last night. There was no mention of blood-soaked carpets. There was no mention of blood in the bathtub. So, if you are like me, sometimes when you shave or floss or whatever it is, sometimes your gums bleed. Sometimes you cut yourself shaving. You might have a little nick or something like that. That's all that the hotel house cleaning said, that there was not enough blood for them to do anything about it. It was just normal. Like, yeah, big deal. A little bit of blood in the sink. That could just mean somebody cut themselves shaving. So I was like, that's interesting. The TMZ is saying that there was not enough blood to make the hotel staff go, oh, we got to call the police. Because that's what I heard for the past 3, almost 4 weeks, that the hotel was soaked with blood. There was blinds over the curtains. There was sheets that were soaked in blood. There was carpet soaked with bloody soaked footprints, and then the bathtub was full of blood. There's blood all over the bathroom. That's what we've been hearing for the past 3 weeks. And last night, TMZ said that the blood was so minimal that the maids hardly noticed. That changes a few things as well. So I thought that was kind of weird. And then again, Harvey mentioned in the documentary that you got to understand, Mick was mentally ill, and he's been in and out of rehab 17, 18 times. I think he specifically said 18 times, which if you roll the clock back, you have to go back to at least when Nick was 22, because Nick was working on the script for 5 years, which takes him back to 18, where he's talking about when he was in and out of rehab between 15 and 18 years old. Let's stretch it out to age 20. But he's working on the script with his friend. And after 4 years of writing it, he brings it to his dad, and his dad says, like, it's not very good right now. It's just, you just got one joke after another. Like, why don't you inject some emotion into it? And then they start talking about it, and let's turn it into a movie. And Nick's like, well, I don't know anything about making movies. And Rob's like, hello, hello. So he said, I'll direct the movie. You write it. It'll be your movie with Matt, but I'll help you polish it. So they worked on it for about 9 months together. And there was a couple of scenes that Nick wanted in because he remembers some dialogue that he had with someone in rehab. And they were scrubbing a toilet, and he's like, I kind of like this because it's kind of funny and it actually happened. So then Rob put it in. And they have both been on record to say, this isn't a movie about us. This isn't a movie about Rob Reiner and his son, Nick. That's not what it's about. It's about a guy that goes in and out of rehab, yes, but it's also about a relationship between his a-hole dad, who is a governor or wanting to run for a governor, and their relationship together. And Nick would say, I don't treat my dad that way, like in the movie. Like the dad is an a-hole in the movie. And the dad was going, well, maybe you think I am. And they start joking. Ha ha ha. Nick said, well, I'm probably an a-hole too then. And they're joking back and forth because we know as parents, sometimes we can be a-holes to our children, and our children could be a-holes to us, especially when we say, hey, you're grounded. You can't go partying this weekend or whatever it is. I don't want you spending time with that friend. And then they give you attitude, whatever it is. We've been there. And that's what these guys are saying in an interview together. But they injected a little bit of themselves, because if you say that Rob Reiner is actually the lawyer in A Few Good Men, played by Tom Cruise, you'd be like, no, Shane, that was a script written and directed by Rob Reiner. I forget who it was written by, but this is a script. This is a movie. It's fictitious. But Rob will go on record and say every movie that he makes, he injects a little bit of his personality into the movies. Princess Bride comes to mind. When Harry Met Sally comes to mind. Leaving Charlie comes to mind. But for some reason, people are like, that's a autobiography. That's a documentary about Rob and his son Nick, and they're trying to give us subliminal messages, which is weird. And I think the mix-up happens because coincidentally, the actor's first name is Nick, that plays Charlie, the son of um, the governor. So when people say Nick hated his father and went crazy, you have to ask the question, are you talking about Nick, the character in the movie? Or Nick, the actor, playing Charlie? Again, this is where it gets confusing unless you ask the right questions. Because Nick, the actor portraying Charlie in the movie, didn't get along with his father. So when news sources like ABC, NBC, all this stuff say Nick didn't get along with his father, they hated each other. It's like, well, are you talking about the actor? Or are you talking about Nick? Because Nick will go on record and say, it wasn't difficult working with my father. I actually enjoyed it because for the first time, we have some common denominator. Because before it was my brother Jake would play basketball, my dad would be into that. But because I love to write, this is something that now my dad and I can have a bond. We can bond with each other because it takes a lot of focus to write a Hollywood script. Over 90%, might even be higher, of Hollywood ideas for scripts never get finished. As in, most people have an idea for a movie and they'll start it, but they'll never finish it. And if they do finish it, they don't write it in the right format, which means it gets tossed into the trash can. So let's say, for example, you write a movie, 120 pages. One page represents a minute in Hollywood. So if you're writing a science fiction movie or whatever, and it's 460 pages, they're going to be like, yeah, you need to stay a little bit shorter unless you're Dune or Lord of the Rings or whatever kind of thing. But the general idea is to stay between 90 and 120 pages. And you're supposed to hole punch the and put it on white paper. If you don't do that, uh, it gets tossed into the garbage can. So if you staple it with a stapler and it's 120 pages and it's the best script since Shakespeare, they will throw it in the trash can. So it's not easy to write a Hollywood script. That's what Nick was working on from age 18 to 22. And then arguably 21, 22 is when Rob Reiner helped him polish it because Rob is used to working with writers. So that should tell you something about Nick. He focused for 5 years writing. It's not an easy task, folks. It's not easy to be focused like that. It's not. And I would consider in some ways Nick to be a borderline genius when it comes to that. So Rob helped him polish the dialogue, helped him make things a little bit more attached to emotion. They had to inject motion. They had to inject stories, all this kind of stuff. But it's fiction. It's not Nick. It's not Rob. These are characters that they created because of some of the things that Nick had went through. And again, it's interesting that the main actor's name is Nick, and he's playing Charlie. So I think that's where some of the confusion has come in. So I learned that Nick hadn't been on any illegal drugs in the past 6.5 years. I've learned that there wasn't any priors. I learned that he prefers non-alcoholic beer. I learned that there wasn't very much blood in the hotel. And here's an interesting thing as well, and I'll be talking about it later in the week, but the whole documentary is about the idea that a doctor changed Nick's prescription. That's why he murdered his parents. And then they had a guy on there that was actually from Canada that actually strangled his, I think it was a 10-year-old son, to death in a hotel room and said it was for your own good. Because he was worried that his son was gonna harm another child. He had some kind of a brain concussion. I forget what it was. And he said he was worried that maybe he could harm his wife or someone else. And so he strangled him, choked him to death in his hotel room. His son strangled him. And he said that he was psychotic. But here's the crazy thing. They're trying to tie this. See, this happens to people. They do these crazy things. Therefore, ergo, Nick must have done it to his parents. But here's the difference. This guy believed he was doing it to free his son. It wasn't because he was mad at his son. It was like he believed that his son could harm someone. So he strangled his son. And then he put him in his bed, crossed his arms, and said that you're in a better place. And then he watched TV for 6 hours. He never left. He stayed there. That to me is cray-cray. You just murdered your own son and you stayed there. We have no evidence that Nick was there at the crime scene. So that should tell you it's kind of weird that he left. If you're trying to say that he's mental, that he's psychotic because the doctor changed his meds a month before this all happened, that's what TMZ has been saying. This is the reason why he did it. He killed his parents. It's like, well, did he leave? Yeah, he left. Why did he leave? Because this other person that was psychotic stayed there. Why would he book a hotel with his credit card and order non-alcoholic beer close to the family home? Well, I would surmise to you that it was because he couldn't get into his home because it was under investigation. So instead, Nick got a hotel close to the home, Pierside Hotel. And he didn't check out because he was arrested that night. Monday night, and this is where TMZ and everyone else screws up all the timelines to fit their narrative. They say Nick booked a hotel on Sunday. And I've been on record to tell you that Nick booked a hotel Monday morning at like 4 a.m. And when he checked in, the hotel staff said this guy's normal looking. He looks normal. There's no blood. So when did he bring the blood? Well, apparently there was no blood because there was just a little bit in the sink, a little bit on the bed sheets. I've cut myself before shaving. And if you don't drink enough water, whatever it is, and you can get dehydrated, it's easy to cut yourself shaving. If you cut yourself shaving, you're going to use the towels, you're going to use toilet paper, whatever, to clean yourself off, and then you just throw the towels in the tub. That's the rule. That's what the house cleaning wants you to do, housekeeping. They want you, the proper etiquette is if you have any towels, is you throw it into the tub. You throw it in the tub. So now you can explain why perhaps there was a little bit of blood in the tub. And they didn't even say that on TMZ. They said there was so little blood that the guest services didn't even bother reporting it. And again, I've been hearing for almost 4 weeks that the hotel found the blood and called the police. And now we're hearing a different story from TMZ saying, actually, they didn't find very much blood at all. This is Harvey Levine saying this. So go watch the documentary. It's actually mind-blowing. So the whole documentary was pointed to a doctor which they couldn't name, a source which they couldn't mention as to the real reason why they changed the meds. Like it's all sources of sources, and we can't reveal sources. And they never had one eyewitness. They never had one testimony from a celebrity, and the celebrities aren't cooperating. Why? I think it's because they didn't see anything happen that was weird at the party, and they don't want to waste their time showing up for a subpoena, showing up at court on the stand to say, I didn't see anything. I wasn't there, or I was there, but maybe I was doing something illegal. Maybe I was smoking something or doing something, having an affair with someone. I don't want to be on the stand because my spouse doesn't know that I was at the party. Whatever it is, they're not biting with the subpoenas. So that tells me either they don't want to rat out Nick, or they didn't see anything and it's a waste of their time. So if that's the case, this is going to be wrapped up very tidy with the defense, and you don't need Alan Jackson because the witnesses are not complying. They're creating their own mess. And if they do show up and they ask them questions, as in the defense asks them questions, their stories are going to have to match everyone else's story. And again, it's hard to keep track of all the lies. It's easier to tell the truth. And again, I believe the truth is going to come out. And here's an interesting thing that they talked about, and I've heard them say this a couple of times now, and you're going to hear this being spun. Nick himself has been on record unofficially to say that he's innocent, that he's not guilty, that he never murdered his parents. And you're going to get people that say he said he did. I'm telling you, he's saying he didn't. He's actually saying that he's being set up. And this is according to TMZ, that Nick believes he was set up. And I told you that from day one. And it's on the documentary that Harvey Levine says Nick believes that there is a conspiracy against him. So if you're not in your sound mind, if you're crazy, why would you say they're framing you? They're setting you up. This is a conspiracy against me. That starts looking a little bit different now. If you get Nick not admitting that he's guilty and saying, I'm not guilty, now you have the prosecution that is going to prove without a shadow of a doubt that he's guilty. Folks, Nick could walk away from this. And I'm the only channel that's mentioned this from day one. Everybody else is changing their story. I haven't changed my story. Nick Reiner is not guilty until proven. He's presumed innocent until proven guilty. I've been on record to say Nick is not guilty. Not by reason of insanity, by reason that he didn't murder his parents. That's all been fabricated. Somebody is trying to get this guy. Somebody's trying to get this family, take advantage of this family. And they're putting it on Nick. Nick is the new patsy. And I'm telling you, again, this is going to leak out more and more and more. People are going to be diving more into this. What is Nick saying behind bars? He's no longer on suicide watch. They're like, he's not a threat to himself. He's in his own state of mind, and he's saying, they're framing me. They're setting me up. This is Rob Reiner's son saying this. Also according to TMZ, because you guys like them so much. So eventually you're going to have to go, well, you know what? Either TMZ is trying to spin another narrative, because they're on record now to say Nick is going to be not guilty by reason of insanity. And they'll go on and say Nick believes that he murdered them. Well, Nick knows why he's in jail. It's because the LAPD charged him with two counts of murder. So he's aware of that. He's aware of the charges. But TMZ spins it and says he's aware that he murdered them. That's different. What I'm saying is Nick knows why he's in jail. It's because the LAPD arrested him on Monday night, December 15th. They didn't arrest him Sunday night, like 99% of the media is saying. And I showed you proof that the LAPD actually had a press conference late Sunday night saying, we have no suspects. We have no warrant for, we don't have a search warrant. So we can't even go into the home. The bodies are still there since 3:45 p.m. Since we left. We're not allowed to go back into the house. That's probably why Rick the next day booked a hotel, because he's not allowed back home. So the police said we don't have any suspects. Zero. We haven't made any arrests. We're just interviewing family, all the family members, so we can figure out what's going on. And we don't have a search warrant, and the coronary hasn't been there yet. The medical examiner didn't arrive yet. I think the medical examiner got there sometime into the wee hours of the morning. But we know they didn't get there before 9:30 on Sunday. There was no medical examiner there yet, because the LAPD said, we can't go into the home yet. The medical examiner isn't here, and we don't have a search warrant. That's Sunday night, folks. Again, TMZ and CNN, Fox, Megyn Kelly, everybody else is telling you stories. And I'm a fan of Megyn Kelly's, but they're all running with the same narrative saying, look, Nick murdered his parents in their sleep. And now, again, according to the documentary, that if you haven't watched it yet, I encourage you to watch it. TMZ is now saying that they were actually murdered in separate rooms, not together in their same bed, sleeping beside each other. Because remember when Megyn Kelly said that in front of the panel? Guys, Nick Reiner, we found out that Nick Reiner actually slayed both his parents in their sleep. He slit their throats, and the panel goes, oh, that's horrible, almost like they're scripted. And how did they find out? Well, Romy went into an ambulance with her mom, Michele, and Michele leaned over to her, sat up in bed in the ambulance and said, Romy, your brother Nick did it. You need to tell the police that he should be a suspect. She gave a dying declaration. That's what Megyn Kelly said. That's what all these other news outlets. And I said, bullcrap. Again, I'm the only one that said it. And then you find out later, Romy was not the one that called 911. No. It was actually her boyfriend. They said it was her roommate / boyfriend, Alex, who also was working with her on a future project. I forget what it was, but he also takes pictures of her as well and all kinds of stuff. So they're romantically involved. So he called 911 because she came out of the residence. She only found her dad. So that makes sense now with what TMZ said. And I said this from day one. What if there was a struggle? What if these guys were actually being burglarized? And then Nick got killed in one room, and then Michele got killed in another room. And I said this. This is what happens to rich people's homes. They get broken into. You gotta ask yourself, what happened to the alarm system? Why was it turned off? Who would have done that? Well, let's ask Rocco the question. Rob's personal assistant, who has ties with Four Lion Security Company. Ask him why he turned off the security footage and cameras and everything, the alarm system, when the Reiners went to the Christmas party. Why did he send the Four Lion security detail home for Christmas? Hey, you guys don't need to be here. And then they get murdered. We're not talking about this stuff, folks. I'm the only one that's asking these hard questions. And I think that's why you guys appreciate this channel. This is why you subscribe to this channel. Hopefully, if you've been watching, hopefully you subscribe to this channel. So we got lots more to talk about, but I think it's important to know that so far everything is being pointed to the medical profession. It's their fault. They did this. They changed his meds. This is why Nick went crazy. When statistically, even if you have schizophrenic affective disorder, that doesn't make you violent. Schizophrenia doesn't make you violent. Just because you do drugs, that doesn't make you violent. What makes you violent is if you have a history of being violent. You have a history. So if you've been known to beat on your mom and dad, chances are you're going to do it again unless there's intervention. So far, there has been no record for 32 years of Nick beating the tar out of his parents. Arguing is one thing. Killing your parents is another thing. Actually, physically fighting with your parents is another thing. It's a whole nother level. But that still doesn't mean you're going to murder people just because you get in a physical altercation. And there's been no record of Nick being in a physical alteration. Instead, people say, well, the police came to the residence a couple times in the last 4 to 6 years. It's like, okay, welcome to Brentwood. There's been police coming to our church every once in a while because an alarm system would go off. Somebody forgot to turn off the alarm or to arm it when they left. And then the alarm went off. Whatever. That happens. If you have high security, sometimes mistakes are going to happen where your dog goes into the wrong room and it's armed, or you don't close the door when you're setting the alarm. And then you leave, and then the alarm goes off, and then the cops show up because you're on that list. If something should happen at this home, please show up. We have a dog. We have a person living in this home, whatever, in the guest house, all this stuff. Security companies know all this stuff. And I used to work for a security company, so I know how they work. I understand how they work. So I hope you got something out of this. I hope this was, again, thought-provoking. And I think this documentary actually helps the defense. Because again, I'll say it again, Nick is not guilty. Print that. Print that. Take that to the bank. So again, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Join us live tomorrow in our panels. We have a panel discussion. And again, during the week, I'm going to be doing more of these shows because, again, I'm going to go through it with a fine-tooth comb. The documentary, it's going to be coming out. People are going to be talking about it probably already today, but they're probably going to skip over the things that I mentioned to you. The fact that Nick was clean, that he didn't drink beer with alcohol in it, that there was hardly any blood in the hotel room. So many crazy things, right? Like, this is a crazy story. And again, Nick is saying he's innocent. Nick is saying he's being framed, which is what I said from day one. This feels weird that 99% of the media is saying guilty, except for Nick and his defense team and the Black Swan. So again, if anything I've learned from Harvey Levine, as he said, you gotta, in this day and age, you gotta take a position. And the problem with CNN, CBC, CBS, Fox, all this is they can't take a position. They pretend that they're neutral, but there's so much bias in it that people don't believe them anymore. So then they click away from their shows. And then you get shows like this where I'm like, look, I'm taking a position. I'm not like the other ones that are jumping on Nick's mental health and saying all this stuff. When he was 7, he couldn't sit still, all this kind of stuff. I'm not like that. I'm actually taking a position. What if Nick is actually not guilty? And I think people appreciate that because they're hearing everyone else say that he's guilty. And it's nice, I think, and refreshing for someone to come on a channel and dedicate their time and energy and say, look, what if they got it wrong? What if Nick is being framed? What if he's actually innocent? What if he's actually not guilty until proven? What if he's presumed innocent until proven guilty. What if? What if? So join me on my next episode. Appreciate you guys, and I'll see you later. Bye for now.